working on a blog because this journey has been so big and it's so much information. I can't even tell you it all if I talk to you every day for a month. It's a lot. And I felt like it was a part of history because I've been doing stuff that I didn't see other people like me doing. So, first off, I know it can be easy to offend people. So I just want to point out that I hope when you hear my story and you hear about the injustice that you do get offended. I hope that it offends you, inspires you, and or touches you so that way you feel so offended that you get convicted to the point that you become inspired to take action to correct the wrongs of the present time and the past that are happening in West Virginia and especially in McDowell County. Has anybody in here heard of McDowell County? Who all hasn't heard of McDowell County? Raise your hand. So 1, 2, 3. We've got 3 people out of about 19 people who haven't heard of McDowell County. McDowell County is where I grew up. And actually the place I grew up was called Twin Branch Holler. And in McDowell County is not connected to an interstate road. There are no colleges. There's one state hospital, and people literally have said all my life that's where you go to die. And people do die there. There is hardly no internet. There's rarely ever a cell phone connection. That is where I grew up. Only 6% of the people who live there end up getting a bachelor's degree, and only 5% get a master's. So, why is that? Well, the first reason is poverty. So, all of West Virginia lives in poverty. If you didn't know that, you do now. Because 6 years ago, before I started speaking, I didn't know we all was living in poverty. Now, I didn't know I was in poverty until I have been doing all kinds of research. That's what led me to these words about these Appalachian people. I know that was me. West Virginia is the only state completely encompassed by the Appalachian Mountains. There's 13 states that have them, but we're the only one completely surrounded. So therefore, we have a unique and different culture than can be anywhere else. We have challenges, but we also have strengths because of these mountains. So, what led me to speak, and used to be my biggest fear, was public speaking. First 29 years of my life, I was real quiet. I had been taught not to be rude or interrupt, not to talk. I've been taught to be the nice girl and be quiet and agree to get along. Not to talk about politics, religion, or poverty, and don't get in the news. Well, I've broken all those rules. But I used to be like a hardcore rule follower. I'm still not breaking all the rules. I'm just breaking the rules that just don't seem right to keep following. So how I ended up breaking these rules is I found myself in rooms full of people talking about Appalachians, and even people in the room were Appalachians themselves, along with my research saying we were at risk, resistant to learning. How does that feel? Resistant to learning. Does that strike a chord in anybody? If somebody said you were resistant to learning, how would that make you feel? Don't everybody chime in at once. Angry. It really messed with me, right? It was offensive. It hurt my feelings. Here I was, a kid whose parents didn't have money for paper and pencils, and I was a straight A student. Well, you have to have paper every day in school. So what I would do, I would have to borrow pieces of paper when I didn't find extra pieces of paper laying in the floor. I felt like I was a thief. When somebody dropped some paper, buddy, I was getting that, so I wouldn't have to ask somebody for some paper. And at the end of the school day, I'd walk up and down the hallway, all the classrooms, and collect all the pencils that the other students had left laying there. Because that was the last times I was going to have to ask somebody, can I borrow a piece of paper? Can I borrow a pencil? And that's the only thing I can recall that nobody ever asked me to pay me back, is borrowed paper. But, and that was something nobody never shamed me for either, but most everything in my life I was shamed for. I just threw trauma in here. We'll talk about that probably a little bit later. What's some offensive words you all have heard people say about Appalachians?
Redneck, hillbilly, trash.
Redneck, hillbilly, and trash. Anybody else?
And bread.
Anybody else? The one that stuck out to me and was always there was Hick. Hick from the holler. The research said all this stuff about us, and I know that it did because I was doing the research. I had heard about poor and abused Appalachians when I was a kid, and that's who I wanted to help. I heard about that in the research in my 4th grade class. So our teacher knew we were Appalachians, and she was telling us the research basically said you all are going to fail. She didn't word it like that, but it set us up to think that we couldn't succeed subconsciously. So I don't know if that makes anybody feel some kind of way, but this is why I speak now. So what happened, how I ended up breaking these rules, as I found myself in rooms full of people that they call professionals. I was a professional too, but I did things in a different way. They were saying this stuff about Appalachians, that they don't want any better. Like the whole lazy thing, and this is how we want to live. We want to live without roads and water and cell phones, and not have trash bills so then people can call you trash. We're having trash in your yard because there ain't nowhere else to go because you can't afford a trash bill or a trash company doesn't exist. So I found myself sitting in a room with people saying that same story. And I had been quiet the first 29 years of my life, and I felt so convicted that my heart was shaking in my chest, and I felt like I was going to have a heart attack if I didn't stand up and say, you're all wrong. That's not true. And that's what I did. And I ran my mouth probably for a good 5 minutes. I don't know what came out of it. First thing I said was, sorry to interrupt all y'all, and I hate to be rude, but I gotta say something. You're all wrong. This is wrong. And I was impassioned, and I just ran my mouth. And then when I got done, I was scared, thought I was gonna be attacked, didn't know what was gonna happen. 90% of the people stood up in the room and started clapping. You wanna know why? They were saying the same thing, but they were too afraid to say it. So they were letting that same story keep being told over and over and over again. So that was the year, I was 29 years old, and I figured out I was living in poverty. I was like, no matter how hard I work, no matter how nice I am, no matter how smart I am, if I keep following these rules, I'm going to keep staying at the bottom. I'm not going to get nowhere else because the systems were made to keep me quiet. And if you're quiet and you're invisible, you're going to be ignored, forgotten about. So I had to use this. And because I was standing up in these rooms telling people they were wrong, because this kept happening over and over and over again at meetings that I ended up getting into, policy meetings, campaign meetings, I was trying to figure out what this stuff meant because I was trying to figure out how to solve poverty. And I kept on speaking and people liked it. So I ended up getting nominated to speak at West Virginia's Capitol. Has everybody in here been to the Capitol? How many people has not been? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So almost half the class. That's where our bills and laws are made. That's like an important place to know what's going on because they're running the show and calling the shots. Well, I ended up there, and a song that inspired me to help me tell my truth when I was so paralyzed by fear and scared half to death, like we're just shaking, because I'm breaking the rules by talking. It's Emily Sand's song, Read All About It 3, and it says, you've got the words to change a nation, but you're biting your tongue. You've spent a lifetime stuck in silence, afraid you'll say something wrong. If no one ever hears you, how are we ever going to learn your song? And then it says, come on, You know what I'm talking about, don't you? And it says, I want to sing, I want to shout, I want to scream until the words, like I don't know if it says dry out or cry out, something like that. It says, put it in all of the papers. I'm not afraid. They can read all about it. Well, I figured something would happen, but I didn't know. And so I went, got my speech ready and everything, and I talked about how hard my parents worked. Has anybody in here, besides me, because I have done this, dug ginseng? So we got one person, and she's a female, in the front row. Awesome. Where did you grow up?
Garrett County, Second Allen.
Garrett County. Is anybody in here from McDowell County? I don't think I asked that. Garrett County. Ginseng is a root that grows in the mountains, and it's in season for 1 month. And people will say, oh, you can get $800 or $1,000 for a pound of ginseng. You want to tell them how hard it is to get a pound of ginseng? How long would it take you to get a pound of ginseng?
Forever.
Like 3 months? And it's only in season for 1 month? And do you know what you have to do to get ginseng? It grows in the mountains, y'all. You gotta hike up in the mountains for hours. You gotta face bears and snakes. I am not exaggerating here. And if you don't know what to do, then you may be running from a bear or get bit by a snake and die. That's what we did when I was a kid. We ginsenged. And that would help us for a few months be easier to get food. My dad picked up cans off the side of the road. My mom cleaned houses for people who had money. They never paid her good, like to clean. And I'm talking about get on your hands and knees and clean the floor, clean all the windows. And the people were not clean like we were. They were filthy, like hoarders and everything. For a 2-story house, my mom would get paid $25. Upstairs and downstairs. It would take her all day long to clean up all the mess. So that's what I saw when I was a kid. And my parents would say, they said since kindergarten, you're smart. They said, you're going to be the one that goes to college. So they would say, if you don't want to have to work this hard, you're going to have to get an education. Because they regretted not going to school. But how could they? How could they have gone? There wasn't any there. I mean, it's a miracle to try to get a degree. It shouldn't be, should it? It should be something that everybody, if they want it, could be able to do it, right? So that's what I did, and I went to the Capitol, and I put my hand up, and it was not easy when I did this. I said, by the grace of God, I'm a walking, talking, and breathing miracle. And I was crying all the way. It's hard to say, and I thought, everybody's going to hate me, you know, like, because I'm telling the truth and breaking all the rules and saying we were poor, you know, like everybody's going to be mad. Because at that point, nobody in West Virginia that was living in poverty was saying we were poor. The professionals were to get their grants, but it wasn't like we were opening our eyes saying, yeah, that's you. That's why we're getting this money is off of you. And so when I figured it out, I'm like, we're living in poverty. Like, oh my God, it was soul crushing. Like, it hurt so bad, I didn't know what to do. And I'm like, this isn't right. So the West Virginia Gazette reporter snapped a picture of me when I put my hand up and said what I did. Now, does everybody think that, you know, people want attention, that it's good to get in the news? Like you think, man, if I make the news or make it on TV, I know I did something. Well, the headline read, poverty gets a face. I was like, no, I don't want that. Well, it resonated so big that I had to accept it. Because, like, yeah, I mean, it was awful. I was like, I want to be a famous singer. I don't want to be the face of poverty. You know, like, no, how could y'all do this to me? You know, the news calls me, poverty gets a face. And then I start getting interviewed on the radio, and they're like, the face of poverty says never give up. And I'm like, that's right, that's the best thing I could tell y'all. You know, is to never give up. Because that's like my biggest message is like, yeah, it sucks. And sometimes, a lot of times, people don't act the way they should. They can be mean, especially if they don't understand what you're going through or how hard it is. But you got to keep on trying, because if you keep trying hard enough and you get enough friends, you get the right connections, it gets easier. It don't mean you still ain't got some more mountains to climb, but it does get easier. So that day, 100, 150 people that were professionals working in the field trying to help the low-income people, you know, my people, gave me their business cards while I was at the Capitol. They weren't the only ones that heard what I said. There was like altogether 1,000 people in the room and under the stairs. There was like 900 people under the stairs listening on an intercom what I was saying. I didn't know all this was going to happen. So after I got done speaking, all these people come up into this. It was a little room. It wasn't much bigger than this. And they're all standing in line wanting to give me hugs, wanting to give me their cards. I'm like, yes. You know, like I was like so nervous. I'm like, oh my God, please don't touch me. I feel like I'm going to break and shatter. Like, please stop, you know, because I just didn't know what to do. But I kept all those business cards, and I reached out to all of those people, every single one of them, and every single one messaged me back. I was like, now this is the first time something got easy, because I had always reached out to people, but they weren't reaching out back to me, you know. So I thought that day that my life was going to change and that change was going to happen faster. Well, now that's not how it worked out. Change can take some time. But what did happen, which did happen pretty quickly, is not even a month and a half after I spoke, after I spoke at the Capitol, Bernie Sanders' office, this was in 2013, had done a life expectancy study on how long people were living in America. And they saw people were dying the youngest, on average, in McDowell County, where I grew up. Now, until 6 years ago, where I've been telling my story and preaching to everybody and, you know, just going to all these meetings and trying to get people to see, like, we need help, this isn't right, like, we can't keep ignoring this. Until I said that, nobody believed there was poverty where we were living. They didn't believe it. And so, Bernie Sanders' office was looking for somebody to talk about growing up in poverty in McDowell County. Well, that was destiny, because nobody else was doing this. I mean, I had to do it. I was the first one. Like, nobody else can say they did this, because I didn't know. I was researching everything trying to figure this out. Nobody, nothing. So they called and asked me, did I know that people were dying the youngest in McDowell County? I was like, is this a joke? I mean, like, my friends, my family, my neighbors, they've all been dying since I was a kid. I mean, I can't even go to all the funerals. I'm like, it's awful. It's horrible. Like, I can't believe that people are just now. I was 29 years old. I'm like, it took 30 years for y'all to figure this out. You know, like 30 years ago, maybe if things were different, I wouldn't have grown up the way I had grown up, which in a lot of ways I think is good. But I've been traumatized by a lot of the stuff I had to go through that I just don't think people in general should have to go through. For example, until I was 32 years old, and I'm 35 now, every day it was a struggle to get food. Every day of my life. So after I spoke at the Capitol, not even a month and a half later, I was at the U.S. Senate sitting on a panel with doctors. Children, pediatricians, somebody with a PhD in like counseling or social work, somebody with a doctorate from Harvard, and I was the only one on that panel that didn't have a doctorate degree, but I had my bachelor's. I was trying to get my master's. This is how I found out I was an Appalachian. I was taking an Appalachian culture class, and it took me a little while to figure it out, but then I was like, they're talking about me. I'm the Appalachian. I was like, I'm this at-risk, resistant to learning, poor, and abused, you know, hick up the holler that they're talking about, that they're getting this money for to help us while they tell us we're going to fail. Because that's going to keep the grant money rolling in, right? The numbers look bad. Well, these people really need help. So I ended up speaking on that panel, and it was called Why Your Socioeconomic Status Could Be an Early Death Sentence in America. And at that time, right before I got there, both of my stepsisters and one of their husbands had died from 3 different things. So I talked about that, and I talked about what I had experienced. And that poverty is what is killing us. They can blame it on all these other issues, and the lack of empathy and people in power, in positions of power or decision-making seats who have not lived through the struggles themselves. Because there is no way for you to know what all this is like until you go through something. And if you haven't been through no traumas, there is no way for you to imagine it. None. It's good if you haven't been through no traumas. That's great. But I think a lot of people in West Virginia are traumatized. And they're living with all this trauma, and that's causing us a lot more problems. And trauma is something we can heal. And one of the things we have to do is we have to tell our stories. And that's how you connect with people. That's how you get friends. That's how you tell each other how to help each other get better. So while I was at the U.S. Senate, the day before I was set to speak, and all my life before this, I always just had to figure stuff out in the moment. Somebody wanted me to do something, okay, here I am, and I just do it. Well, the day before I was to speak, two women named Sophie and Erica, who worked for Bernie in the Senate. Sophie still does, but Erica doesn't now. She had a couple of kids and was doing stuff back in her hometown. They took me to the room I was going to be speaking in, and my husband was there with me. And this was in the evening. They turned the lights on. So when you walk into the room, you come in through a door. And I was standing in a room like this. It was a real big room, though. And there were chairs facing this way, and there was like a big desk up here, big desk here with nameplates on it. I felt like I was breaking the rules being in this room. It was like in the evening, I was like feeling like I was in trouble, like, oh, we gotta get out of here, like, what am I doing? And I looked at my husband, and I looked up, and I saw where Bernie Sanders, it said he was like the head chairman or something like that, and it was on the Health Committee, Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee. And I was like, well, that's good. I learned that before I got there. But I looked and I said, I mean, I was real far away. I said, oh, look, there's where Bernie Sanders is. And Sophie or Erica one said, oh, well, Sabrina, go up there and sit in Bernie's chair so you can practice for when you get to the Senate. I went, wait a minute. Somebody like me could do something like that? Really? I gotta figure out what these words mean. So I got up there. I sat down in the chair. The gavel was there, and I was like, they haven't said if I could do this, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Bam! I smacked that gavel down. And they told my husband, Garrett, get up there and stand behind her so we can take a picture. And I was like, oh, thank God. Because I was like, nobody's going to believe this unless I got proof. You know, and this was in 2013, y'all. So he got up there, they took a picture, and I started studying all the words in the legislator, policy. I can't even think of some of the words. I didn't know what they meant right now. But I started writing them all down, and those were like 150 people that I made friends with at the Capitol that day. I would call and be like, hey, yeah, so I heard this conversation about this. Tell me what you know about this. And they'd explain it, and I'd figure it out. I'd be like, all right, thank you. And then I'd figure out more and learn more. And as time went on, it took me about 3 years, but I figured out the system. The House, the Senate, the legislator, and then there's the state, there's the federal. I knew what the words meant and had enough friends to help me figure out stuff if I didn't know, like on a whim. Like I could be like, what does this mean? You know, like text somebody and figure it out. So I ran for House of Delegates seat in Mercer County, which is one county away from where I grew up. It's an hour and a half away. Mercer County has several hospitals, several colleges, banks, all kinds of places to eat, connected to the interstate. You know, drastic difference, but still the same poverty that is in McDowell County is in Mercer County and every county of West Virginia. So I did that, and when I started out, I got the support of like the teachers' unions, the miners' unions, and I held on to all the money people gave me, and just regular people were giving me money too, but I held on to it. Like I got 500 business cards and maybe like a little poster or something. Like I was holding on to that money, and everybody was telling me to spend it, and the campaign people and the people who goes by political stuff. I didn't know nothing about this beforehand. And I'm like, no, I couldn't spend that money on myself, but I just thought, if I had a meeting and had a bunch of food, I can feed some people at least, teach them something, and maybe it'll help them, in their lives do better. But I didn't get the opportunity to do that because I didn't get help for it. We weren't there yet. We could not do that. It was not possible. I tried. So, I had about $8,000 from that. And that may sound like a lot, but it is not. And when you start doing campaign stuff, it costs money. When they invite you to events, it's like $50, $100 just so you can get in a room where 200 people are. And everybody else is eating oysters, and I'm in my high heels in my business suit going, hi, Sabrina Shrader, here, would you like a pamphlet? Yeah, I want you to vote for me. Like, let me tell you, I came from the holler. Have you seen anybody from the holler up in the legislature? Right, you came from the holler too? Well, we got to get in there. We got to get somebody to represent us. Well, you think they'd be like, oh, yeah. Well, they had to think about it. Like, they just something new, right? Had over 5,000 people vote for me. Which is about half of what I needed. Pretty good. My maiden name's Allen, Sabrina Allen. And I married Shrader, so people didn't know who I was. I really needed billboards. But I really didn't have the money for billboards, and I thought they cost like $1,000 a piece. And you only get them up for 1 month. So I held on to that money, and a month before Election Day, a group called Our Revolution came together, and they had endorsed Bernie Sanders and candidates that were similar to Bernie Sanders. Well, they sent out an email. I saw the email, didn't see my name on it, didn't realize my name was on it, of 7 candidates' names, which included mine, asking people all across America that was affiliated with this group to donate to these candidates. Well, I didn't hardly sleep for 3 days because somebody messaged me and said, did you see your name is in the email? And I'll be checking the email because it was exciting to see, because it had this little thing where when people gave money, it raised it up and it showed you how much money they were giving. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. Like these people are helping out these candidates. And then somebody texted me and said, your name's on it. And I was like, no way. So I went back and I'm like, oh, my name is on there. So then I'm like, well, how much is this am I going to get? Like, I didn't know, because it was like putting everybody's money together and it wasn't split evenly. So then it poured over into an account with my name on it, and in 3 days it was $20,000. That's when I was like, I'm going to make money when I write a book. Because these people are just giving money because my name's in an email. I was like, for sure. So I took that money and I bought 10 billboard spots in Mercer County. And it says, Sabrina Shrader, let's clean house. We need to clean out the House and Senate and all the seats of government so that people like us who actually represent us and know what we go through and have felt it are the ones calling the shots and making the decisions. Because those are the people that you would trust, right? Be a lot easier to trust them if they've been through it. Now, they can still be corrupted too. Anybody can. But it would be I think it would be a lot better if even people who didn't understand how things worked, if we just like flipped the chessboard, started over with other people, people who haven't had that much power. So with all that being said, what that led to is because that group endorsed me, the West Virginia Gazette came out and interviewed me again. And they interviewed me while I was at Star 95. That's a radio station in Mercer County. And here I was, I cannot believe this. My grandma had bought me some pearls from Avon. And they were like white here and black here. I did not even look at these pearls like this until they wrote about it in the West Virginia Gazette. Sabrina Shrader's dressed up with her blazer and her jeans and her mountain boots and her plastic pearls on a string. I was like, my grandma's going to be so offended. Like, she bought those for me for my birthday. I was like, oh my God, I cannot believe they said it was plastic pearls on a string. I hadn't even realized that they weren't real pearls. It's like, my grandma got those for me. Like, oh. So the good thing that came out of that is because I made the news, and I made the news because that group endorsed me, because everybody's like, why is Bernie Sanders doing something with somebody in West Virginia? Like, what is going on here? Like, they were all curious. Well, they just didn't know. It was because I told my story. Like, it threw me into it. There was no way I could have avoided this. These guys interviewed me, and then it caught the attention of other countries. So a couple of guys come from London. They work for the Guardian newspaper, Paul Lewis and Tom Silverstone, and they came and interviewed me. My grandpa was there. Does anybody in here call their grandpa Pawpaw? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, and your mama, your grandma, mama, 5. Okay, Pawpaw and mama. So we got some people in here. He talks the same way as McDowell County. My papa was in it, and it was not planned for him to be in it. He had got done working real hard that day, stacking wood and working for somebody 7 or 8 hours, and we were going to leave. I had spent like 48 hours with these 2 guys because they did not know what they didn't know. So I was telling them all about it, introducing them to people, and you don't see all that in this just 8 or 10 minute clip. It was a lot of work, and they did even extra work beyond what they did with me. They met with the sheriff and all kinds of other stuff. But they did a real good job interviewing people and learning for themselves. But my papa was walking, and we were going to leave McDowell County, go to Mercer. We thought we were done with the interview. And I saw my papa, and I hadn't seen him in a while. And they made us do a double take of this shot. So it's not as exaggerated as I'm telling you right now, but this was really how it was. I was like, hey, that's my papa, and you're going to give him a ride. And I said, hey, Papa, and he noticed it was me, and I said, you want to ride? And he went, yes! Because he was tired. He was walking home. I'm like, that shouldn't make you walk like that. And I've done it before, too. I've had to walk. I had to walk to Concord when I went to get a degree there, 2 miles there, 2 miles back. I'd work 80 hours a week for my internship and did not get paid. I mean, so I had to do all this hard work, and people be seeing me walking all this time, not giving me no rides. Like something needs cleared out up here. You know, if you've got friends and people you know that's telling you their car's broken down, you need to help each other. You got to help each other get through, because you're going to need each other one day. Whether you like people or not, you're going to need each other. So, other countries started coming. Israel, Russia, Germany, Spain, China. I mean, I can't even remember all of them. When these people would come, I just had to go and start doing the interviews, and people got angry. They didn't like the way, because it became real political. They were like, why people in the poorest county had faith in Donald Trump? Well, it wasn't that people had faith in Donald Trump. They had faith in God. And really the reason why the people who did vote for him, they voted for him because they thought, maybe if we try somebody who hasn't been in politics, but little did they know. I mean, he's in the businesses and everything else. It's the same difference. And he's an actor, which is what almost all of them are. We should vote for somebody like him. And then you also think because they have money that they're going to help. Plus there's the coal issue. They thought, well, he's going to help with the coal just because he put on a coal hat and a shovel. And I'm like, that dude ain't ever dug no coal a day in his life. He would about die. You put him in there and there ain't no light in there. Like, he probably would accidentally hit his head and kill himself, you know, in the bottom of a mountain. I mean, like, that is not going to happen. But that's what it became about. And so people got real angry. And so I came up. My vlog is about my story of all this. I'm just giving y'all bits and pieces and summarizing this. How I went from the holler and made it to Capitol Hill. I mean, because that's a miracle in itself. How somebody who used to talk like this made it to Capitol Hill and then ran for a House of Delegacy. You know, if people said I couldn't do it, it'd be impossible. I was like, yeah, I'm going to find out. I'm like, I'm going to do this. Because somebody like me had to do it. Because nobody like me had done it. We didn't know we could. So there are a lot of other people running. I don't know if they're come from the same hardship, really, as thick and strong as mine. But you don't have to come from it that hard and thick and strong if you're going to do the right thing no matter what. And the right thing means right for everybody. And it can be hard to do that when you get around money and things and people and material stuff. It can be real hard. But with all that being said, y'all got any questions? She made fun of some of my coal mining friends.
She did.
And I told her twice if she would apologize that I could try to be friends with her, and she would not do it.
Ooh.
So there were even organizations that would not endorse people that I knew that were doing the good and right thing because they wouldn't endorse her.
I didn't know.
You don't understand how it is until you get in there. You don't know. It's like school.
Thank you for your honesty.
Yeah, you're welcome. I don't mind saying it's the truth, and I've got screenshots of it and everything. Yeah.
Did you say what you originally went to the Capitol for? Like, how you got in that situation?
I got nominated to tell my story. So I had been in several different rooms, going to meetings, policy workshops. I didn't even have a car when I went to the Capitol. Like, this is so crazy when I look back at it. All the things I was doing, I was working 2 jobs, walking back and forth to the college, trying to get a master's degree, doing a 15-hour-a-week internship that I wasn't getting paid for, and doing all kinds of stuff, and the building had mold in it. And so I would have done a lot more, a lot faster if I hadn't gotten poisoned by the mold. So that actually slowed me down, and I guess that gave me the time to learn. I was forced to go to meetings because that's where I had to figure it out. But it was making a lot of connections with people. One thing I can say is there was a campaign called Our Children, Our Future campaign, and they said their goal was to end child poverty. Well, I think it's good, they do good work and stuff, but it's still not the same way I would do it. And I spent like 4 years volunteering for them, didn't get paid, and did all kinds of stuff for them. It did help school me on issues and people and what's going on, who's playing what game on multiple levels. But what I call those people that's working for like the nonprofits, and I'll have to say Legal Aid of West Virginia is the best I've ever seen, and they treat people good and right, and they are humble people, they are respectful, the ones in West Virginia. That's who I'm speaking for because that's who I know. I'm on their board, and that's the only board I'm on now. I've been on several before, and I've learned a whole lot. But they're the best. A lot of these people, they ends up working for the nonprofits or to say they want to end poverty. They're getting paid to do that, and I think people should get paid. You know, we need money to survive. But they're what you call the boots on the ground, or like the people in the grass. They're on the ground. So they don't have to worry about walking 2 miles to work or not having a car. How am I going to get right to the Capitol? I've been nominated to speak. I'm scared half to death, but how am I going to get there? I mean, I was having to negotiate and barter everything I could, and I had no money to even get there. Even in other rooms that I got into before, I was having to do a lot of work for other people who did not value me to even get in rooms to be able to speak, which is not something I planned on doing. You know, like it just ended up infuriating me so bad. I was just trying to learn. I was writing in a notebook, how do I start a campaign? How do I start a coalition? I mean, I didn't even know what it was, but I heard throughout history that young people in other countries that had all kinds of injustices going on, that it would take 30 years of the young people coming together before they would see a change. And still after 30 years, they wouldn't know if it really made the change until after the 30 years, and then to see if they could make the difference. So when I started at 29, I was like, 30 years? Like, I'll be 60. Like, what? And I was like, we got the internet now, baby. Like, so I'm like networking. I have over 4,000 friends on my Facebook. Y'all can add me, Sabrina Shrader. No C in my name, my last name there. I have over 4,000, and it's people from all over West Virginia, all over the country, and all over the world. And it's people that ends up hearing my story, and they message me. Even if they don't believe in God, it doesn't matter. You know, like, we become friends because we see something's wrong and we want to help support each other. And that's the point with Holler to the Hill. What I want people to do, instead of arguing on whose side are you on, which issue are you for and against, we need to help each other be friends and care about each other so that we can get organized, like as a group of people, like West Virginians, and put the pressure on the people who are calling the shots and making these decisions. And it's gonna take some time, because it took me some time to figure out what I'm telling y'all. And a lot of times I found myself in rooms, didn't know what to do. I was the only West Virginia platform committee member for the Democrat platform, the National Democrat platform. I was the only person from West Virginia in this room. Of all these people making a national platform, and some of the states had 5 people from their state. And what I didn't know, this was down in Orlando, Florida, and I had to raise money. I had to get people to give me thousands of dollars. And I was not the one to ask for money. Like, I was like, oh my God, I need some help. How am I going to make it? Like, here I am nominated to do this. How am I going to get there? I don't have the money. And people did give me money. People from Canada, people would be like, I want to help her get to do this. Well, once I got in the room, I figured out. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what was going on until I got in the room. They're talking about hundreds of amendments. I'm like, amendments? How do y'all know what these amendments are? Well, they all had gone to emails about them. And if you wanted to make a recommendation to change an amendment, you had to send the email a week before you got there to get something added on. I'm in there like, what are these amendments? Somebody showed me. You know, somebody had them printed out. I was going through looking for something. Give me something that I can speak, you know, about McDowell on. So I found a couple things. I was like, all right, I'm going to do this. And then I go ask somebody, so how do I get time to talk? Because people are going up on a microphone. Blah, 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 blah. I'm like, how do I get over in that line with that microphone? They're like, well, you're going to have to find somebody to give you some of their time. I was like, okay. So I go over to the Virginia representative. I spent an hour and a half trying to get her to give me 10 seconds. I wanted 10 seconds to say one sentence, okay? She would not do it. She just wasn't seeing it. She's telling me about Virginia problems. I'm like, but it's where she was like acting like McDowell County didn't matter. I'm like, we got it the worse than anybody, you know? She's like, yeah, but I'm going to talk about this issue because I'm from Virginia and that's what we're going to do. I'm like, we can't work together. So I looked at her and I said, okay, that's fine. You're not going to listen to me. You're not going to help me. I'm going to find somebody who will. So a month before that, I was flown on a plane for the first time in my life. Never thought I would do that. And I spoke in D.C. about the ways to reduce poverty in America on C-SPAN with the Democratic National something committee. Cornel West, does anybody know who he is? You know who he is, right? Anybody know who Cornel West is in here? Y'all need to look up Cornel West. Okay, Cornel West was at that, and he spoke. He's a professor. Deborah Parker, she's a Apache Native American. She was there, and I have part Apache on my dad's side of the family. And I had become friends with them a month before. Well, they was in this room. The month later, they was in the room where I was at. So Cornell has got a lot of fans, a lot of people who likes him, and there's all these people around him in a big old circle. I would say like groupies. And I need him to see if he will help me get this sentence added on to this amendment. And they're all telling me it ain't possible, but I'm going to try. Because I just feel like I at least have to try, you know, so I can say I tried to do something while I was there. And so I stuck my arm in the middle of all them people and I went like this and I said, Cornell, I need you to look at this sentence and see what you think about it. And he just turned around away from all them and he read the sentence and he said, well, I like it. And it was something to do with ending toxic dumping. It's a lot of trash is getting dumped in McDowell County. And the representatives will say it's not coming from other countries, but the train cards is like Yang Ming, and I've got pictures of all that, and I'm like, what are they putting down here? From all over the world, dumping it down there. And so I said, we want to get them to stop doing that. And so we've been putting the sentence to say in places that already are highly dumped in, which is McDowell County. So he tells me I need to talk to Deborah Parker, the woman I just told you about a minute ago. I said, well, okay, yeah, where's she at? So he helps me find her. So she likes the sentence. So I'm like, all right, I know these two are going to help me. So I'm like, now what do we do? And they said, well, you need to talk to Bill McKibben. Anybody here heard of Bill McKibben? I need to look him up too. So Bill is like an environmental scientist, and I hope I'm saying that right, but he's big in the environment and getting things cleaned up and all this. So they go to Bill, and I never met Bill. I didn't know what he was going to think. He reads it. He says, I like it. He says, email it to me, and I'll add it on there. I'm like, really? It was that easy? Wow. So I'm like, okay, I got Bill McKibben's email. So I email him, and I sit down, and there's a man sitting beside me. He was from North or South Dakota. He was a Cherokee Indian chief. Well, Cherokee Indian. He might have been a chief, I'm not for sure. Cherokee Native American. So I sat down. I was feeling proud of myself. I said, oh, I feel so good. And it took me like over 2 hours to do everything I told y'all because I had to fight with that woman. And so, I ain't gonna say her name, but I was sitting there and I'm like, oh, Betty, I feel so proud and excited about myself. They said I couldn't get no sense out on there. Well, I did. You just gotta, people don't understand. Even if you get no's, you gotta find your yes people. You just gotta keep going. Somebody is gonna give you a yes. He said, well, you're a wise young lady. I was like, thank you. He's like, you do good in sales. I was like, I don't want to do that. Then this guy comes up to me right after this. I'm sitting at a table feeling proud of myself. This guy comes up to me, and I had seen him in a video before this. And I thought he was a senator for Kentucky because of how he looked in his video. And he's not. His name's Celis Wilder. So Celis is standing in front of me. And this is after I started speaking. I'm looking for other people like me. So I'm like, this dude's like me. He was a coal miner. You know, he's in Kentucky. So he stands in front of me, and he's like, are you Sabrina Shrader? And I'm like, yeah, are you Celis Wilder? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, wow, are you a senator? He's like, no. I'm like, okay, well, I thought you were. And he's like, well, what I was wondering is if you wanted some time to speak. I was like, about what? Because now I'm feeling defensive because I done had to work real hard just to get my sentence on there. And I'm thinking I'm going to have to fight the Virginia lady all over again. And I don't want to fight her again. You know, right? And so I'm sitting there thinking about it. And I'm like, well, how much time would you be giving me? And the most time anybody got was 5 minutes. And you think that's a long time, but it ain't. And it's hard to say what you need to say in 5 minutes. And especially in a room full of people who haven't eaten in like 12 hours. And then that's what we did. We had to keep going to get it done. Like 8 o'clock in the morning to 2 o'clock in the morning. And then the next day was 8 o'clock to midnight. So, yeah, it's a lot of work. And when you get in there, it's like you want to stop, but it's like you can't. He says 2.5 minutes. And I said, well, what can I talk about? He said, anything you want. And nobody had said that to me before. Everybody else had prepped me on the things that they wanted me to say. So I said, okay, I'll take it. So I started writing down how in the years of 2000, 2001, my grandmother was in the flood. It flooded out her home. She lived in her car for a year. My best childhood friend's mom had just fallen over dead, like 2-3 months before that. And so I'm like, nobody else was saying stuff like this. They were like, oh, this issue, blah, 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 the statistics, and come on, let's talk about the real people here. You know, you got to hit them in the heart and the gut. You got to get them somewhere if they're going to listen to you, because they don't hear a hit from a holler. Then they hear this voice, they just turn it off. They think I'm stupid, lazy. So this other guy comes up right after Celis did, Mark McGann, Latino guy. And he's like, hi, are you Sabrina Shrader? Now, I don't know how they found out who I was or how this happened. I still don't know. I'm like, yeah. He said, well, I just wondered if you wanted some of my time to speak tomorrow. I'm like, do you know Celis Wilder? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, he just asked me. He's like, well, he's giving you some of his time, and I'm giving you some of mine. I'm like, well, I will take it. Okay. So I'm like dumbfounded, like, whoa. So the next day, I noticed some people would steal the microphone from other people. And then they did that. Nobody else knew they were. So they was stealing people's time. So I was like, oh God, that Virginia lady's speaking first. And she's going to talk forever. I was like, she's not going to let me speak at all. And then I was like, what if somebody grabs the microphone before I do? I'm not going to get to speak. And they was like, you got to be ready. And C-SPAN is recording this. So it's like these banquet tables, and then you go up in between the tables and you talk, and C-SPAN's there and all these other panels and stuff. So I'd be like, yes, I think it was my turn, but I didn't know. So I go out like this, and it wouldn't be my turn. Take my head down, I'm like, oh crap. You know, and then plus I'm on Facebook like, hey guys, watch C-SPAN, I'm about to be on C-SPAN, you know, so like, everybody's watching, and I'm like, oh man, this is crazy. So then the woman gets up there, and she's like, I did not know this, I didn't know they could work out deals like this, and she's like, we've made a unity amendment, so I'm giving Celis the mark my time. She doesn't even talk a minute, and then she hands the phone to Celis. Well, they don't want to hear us because they've already heard Cornell West, Bill McKibben, Josh, what's his last name? I don't know, it's Josh Fox. He made a documentary on the earth and stuff. These big name people, they got to speak. They kept on increasing the time so they could keep speaking. Bless you. So they thought they done heard about this issue, and the only reason we got to talk, because they were booing us. They wanted out. They wanted done. They didn't want to hear what we had to say. They were tired. There was opposition to the bill. If there hadn't been any opposition, there would be no point in listening to us anyway. So it was opposition. They were booing us. They didn't want us doing this, and you don't see this from the video. So Celis gets up there. He's like, "Come on, Celis, water." You know, he's like talking as fast as he can talk. And the person in the front who's in charge is like, 2 minutes, you know, like telling you how much time you got left. So he only spoke for like a minute or two, and then he hands me the microphone, and she's like, 2.5 minutes. And so I'm like, now nobody's listening to me yet. I'm like, my grandmother lived in her car for a year after the floods, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like trying to talk loud, trying to get their attention. If you listen, like somebody's like, you know, like they're having a side conversation over here, and I'm like, I'm wanting to scream, but I'm like, I just turn in their direction, like, and I'm shaking, like I'm like trying not to fall out on the floor. And when I get done, I'm like, thank you, Bernie Sanders, for helping this one little Appalachian holler girl be included in all this. Then I'm like, you know, like I just start bawling because it was so hard to do. And then Deborah comes up, she's giving me a hug, other people give me hugs. I don't see none of this happening. I'm the only person that this happened for. They all stand up and they're giving a standing ovation, and my face is covered. I'm bawling my eyes out because the way I was treated when I first got there, I had my business cards. I'd be like, hi, Sabrina Shrader, just giving you my business card in case you want to keep in touch. And they was not taking my business cards. And I was like, what is going on here? Hi, I thought we were all supposed to be friends. Like, hey. Well, you know, like, we're going to need each other's help. You know, well, later on, the Virginia lady. So after all this happens, okay, now people are, like, in somebody, even the background. So they let some people, not that many, like a group full of people, in the back that was just observing all this happening. I'm standing up there crying, and this woman in the back goes, we love you, West Virginia! I'm like, oh, that's good, because I needed to hear that, because, you know, I wasn't feeling the love, you know. So then they're like, no opposition, passes. I'm like, wow, they did listen. So I'm like, okay. We get outside, and people are talking to me, and the Virginia lady goes, you did it, baby, you did it. And she's like an older lady with like this short haircut. And she said, when you try to hand me your business card, I just thought you were like a teenager or something. The picture I had on my card was of me wearing a suit with a tie when I went to the U.S. Senate. And I was wearing the tie that my husband wore when we got married. That was my first time wearing a suit when I went to the U.S. Senate. And I said, well, I was 29 years old in that picture. And she said something like, well, you look like a kid. And I said, well, doesn't God tell us to be like children? And she was like, and she walked off. And I'm like, well, she had to give me such a hard time. But then it really worked out. So that is the kind of stuff that I've been doing without even planning it. It's like those kind of things happen, and then I'd have to do a lot of work to make it happen. And then once I got there, it'd be like another whole challenge. Anybody else?
Bernie Sanders in person? Is he
His, his people that works in the Senate and him have treated me the most respectful and the best out of all the political people, including our state's people. And I think honestly what happened, okay, so the day that I went and spoke at the U.S. Senate, is anybody familiar with the Upper Bound program or HISTA, Health Sciences Technology Academy? I was in both of those programs. I actually got in a car wreck when I was 16, had to learn how to walk and talk again. And I was going to get, I got a scholarship from HISTA, but I was going to be a brain surgeon, and I really couldn't do it after that. My hand used to shake like this, and you can't do it if you don't have perfect precision. So anyhow, when my name pulled up on the roster to be speaking, this West Virginian from speaking on the panel at the U.S. Senate, Joe Manchin's office called me that morning that I was going to be doing this. And somebody from the office wanted to meet with me. They all were intrigued. How did you get here? I mean, I just thought about, well, you know, them things with the rubber wheels on them. I mean, that's how. But I wasn't a smart aleck. I just thought, really? Y'all don't know how I got here? Well, they just didn't know that Bernie's office reached out, right? They didn't know because they didn't reach out. Well, while I was there, I talked about being Upper Bound and HISTA and Head Start. It really helped me. And two guys, one worked for Rockefeller and one worked for Manchin, were in the Upper Bound program. So they came to speak to me, and one guy was like, you talk about, because I was mad, sequestration what meant budget cuts. And they were cutting the Upper Bound that year, Upper Bound program 5% at Concord University. I mean, that's near where the lowest income people are. And it helps kids get to college, this program does. I was like, that 5% cut is going to knock 10 kids out of the chance that I got, because I just got a chance. It wasn't like this was set up for me to try to do something. It was a chance. And the one guy said, you know, my grandpa would have to drive me 3 hours to Marshall, and he said it would be like once every few months or something. He's like, but that really helped me. And he said, I thought about all the other kids who didn't get to do that. Like, what happened to them? I'm like, yeah, what happened? So while I was there, I didn't understand the U.S. Senate. I didn't know where nothing was. They were like, we work for Manchin and Rockefeller. You want to meet them? I was like, yeah, you know, take me to their offices. Rockefeller wasn't there, but I was having an issue with the DHHR with Medicaid. I'd been struggling with it for a whole year. They should have given me Medicaid, and they didn't. I made some friends in there, ended up like getting them to call and fix it. So I used everything I could use. Then they said Joe Manchin wasn't there, but then he came in and I met him. So that's when I started to build a relationship with him. Just because I have a working relationship with people does not mean I agree with everything they do or don't do. And so I tell you this because people think you got to agree with everybody on everything. Well, there ain't nobody that I agree with 100%. Even me and my husband don't agree, you know, 100%. Like, you don't agree with your best friends 100% unless you're pretending, you just acting. You know, you are, you just acting if you are agreeing on everything because you're telling a lie, because you really disagree about something. But my point with all this is to get people to quit hollering at each other and quit fighting over all these issues on who's right and who's wrong and holler to the hill. Put the pressure on the people that's in power, in our seats of government and everything, and also get involved. Learn about politics, run for seats, get involved with groups, help support other people that you like. Just because they say they support an issue, try to dig how deep. How much do they support that issue? What have they done? You know, look at what they've done. People can say, what do they support? Well, how have they been before they ran? What did they do before then? And if other people can't say the good that they've done, then they haven't done that much. You get what I'm saying? Like, anybody can stand up and say they've done a whole lot. But if other people aren't saying, yeah, that person helped me out, like, they give you the shirt off their back. Well, you won't give me the shirt off your back when I need some help, then I don't want you being my boss or my decision maker. Because if you need one, I'm going to give it to you. If I got it, you're going to get it. So y'all can add me on Facebook, check out my blog, SabrinaShrader.com. And if y'all got any questions after class, we'll have a few minutes. Got any questions right now? I'm open.
Can I put you on the spot? Can you do the Hill song that you did for me?
Yeah. So this is a song I wrote when I was trying to get these stories out on paper. Because what I'm doing today looks pretty easy, but it's taken me years to be able to get in front of a group full of people. And one of the reasons is, I have a good relationship with Tina, so I feel real comfortable in front of her. So I feel pretty safe in this room and in her other class. But I ended up writing this song while I was writing about my best friend. A few years ago, actually. You see, I'm from Twin Branch Hollow, and I grew up singing in the mountains of West by God, Virginia. And I did it a lot, I sang a lot by myself. There's so many things I had to pretend they weren't hurtful, so many things I had to hide inside, so I wouldn't dwell on the pain of losing so many close to me, so many people that I loved deeply. But now I'm telling the truth, I'm sharing that truth, and I'm hollering to the hill, hollering to the hill, up on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. I am hollering to the hill, all of the hills, to the mountains all around me, and in Capitol Hill in D.C. Holler to the hill, holler to the hill, holler to the hill, holler, holler, holler. Just recently, one of my best friends died unexpectedly. She was a good person, no one could imagine that she would end up down a dark road. But so many people, so many of my family, so many of my friends have been on that road. It's like going down a deep, dark hole, and it seems almost impossible to get out of. I've been in that hole, it's like a tunnel with no light, looking around, trying to figure out which way to go. No light, no signs, just darkness. What you need to know is follow your soul and holler to the hill, holler to the hill, up on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. I need you to holler to the hill, all of the hills, to the mountains all around you, and in Capitol Hill in D.C. Holler to the hill, holler to the hill, holler to the hill, holler, 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 holler to the hill, holler to the hill, holler to the hill, West Virginia holler, so we can be healed. Y'all get the message?
Any more questions?
Did you say what your, oh, sorry. No, go ahead. I was gonna say, did you say what your bachelor's degree was in?
Social work.
Cool.
Well, I'm going to tell you this, like I told the other class. You're going to see a lot of things that are messed up, and the systems are not right. And so for me, I kept working all kinds of different jobs and trying to do good. I've done a lot of different social work jobs, and I actually had to start out as like direct care staff, which is minimum wage jobs, even with my bachelor's degree. So I tried to go get my master's so I could counsel people. I worked in a crisis unit. I did all kinds of stuff, and for me, it was too messed up for me to keep on trying to make change from the inside. But there's a lot of good people on the inside still trying to help people. And so just because the rules tells you something, like how I talk about these rules, for me, the rules said I couldn't talk about God, said I couldn't be friends with my clients, and I couldn't tell them nothing about myself. Well, those were the three things that I thought were most important to me. And so I can't work inside of those systems as jobs of getting paid, because even then they wouldn't let me create my blog or post what I want to on Facebook. And you'll see what I'm talking about when you go to my Facebook. I'm a poster, you know, like trying to get this changed and rubbed off on people. So I just caution you and also tell you, if you find yourself in a place that you hate, you think it's wrong and everything, it's good for you to find a different job before you quit. Because it will be a lot harder on you if you don't. And it's also good not to burn bridges. I mean, because it's all connected. And what were you going to say?
I was just gonna ask you about, like, did Dow County ever figure out anything about the trash, how they don't have any, like, trash services?
Well,
Has anything, like, been?
well, they may have some. It's just the haulers and stuff doesn't have it. And there's a lot of people who can't afford it.
Yeah, I just didn't know if, like, there had been anything done, like, to try to, because I just think that's horrible.
There's dirty
Not
water.
having to do with your trash?
There's dirty water down there and clean water in a lot of places.
Yeah.
I've worked 3 years in the town of O'Toole. This is not something I got paid for. This is what I did. It was the right thing to do because I know what it's like to be without water. It took us 3 years. We got the community organized, which was a job in itself, because they were all following the rules. And I'm like, this is what we have to do. We have to ask for money. We have to talk about how bad it is to not have water or to take a shower. You can't drink this water. We made videos. We did all kinds of stuff, and we fought the system, and it did not work. And so I said, well, we're just going to have to ask. We'll ask all my friends on Facebook if they'll give. Well, there were other people that gave too, but to make a long story short, after they were put in the news in February, it's taken several months. It's taken somebody who's very organized down there near that community that people respect, because a lot of people still don't respect me. I don't care. Like, I'm going to keep running my mouth. A missionary group came in and gave the extra money that we all needed. It was thousands of dollars, and to the best of my knowledge, about 17 families got hooked up in that town, which is how many people we were trying to get hooked up. So they had been forgotten about because it was an old coal company, water company, and they weren't on the public service district's water. And because it all costs money, and they didn't have no money, they weren't going to get that water. Their water had sewer and trash and bugs, and people got MRSA from the water. One woman got hepatitis. She's in Georgia now fighting for her life. I mean, she's very sick, and there's somebody close to me who was shaved during that water, got an infection the size of a softball in their chest, and had to be cut out. They almost died when that happened because they had their blood pressure so high. So it's been a lot. I went to the West Virginia Department of Environmental Protection. I talked about that. I showed pictures of the red water. There's a video of this on YouTube. My face swelled up. The inflammation attacked me so bad because I had to do it by myself, because everybody else had to work, didn't have rides, and I had to come up here by myself with all their stories. And I was trying to keep water protections in place. There was 96 chemicals that they were testing for in water, and I thought after they heard what I said, they wouldn't cut them. Well, they cut it down to 50 some. They don't care. They're working in those systems. They've got their jobs, and they're keeping their paychecks, and they're what they think is comfortable. And so that's how it works for a lot of people. And that's the truth. And so that's why I say, I hope people get offended. If you don't get offended, like, I really want to know why you don't care. Was everybody in here offended? Is anybody not offended? Everybody's offended, right? So the truth doesn't feel good all the time. But that's okay. Like, we don't have to get depressed about it. We can do something about it. And there's a lot of people who need help. There's a lot of people who need friends. That's what helps me. If I make a call on Facebook and say I need money, I mean, you know, my husband would probably get real upset. But if I said I needed money and we didn't have it, there are people I know for a fact that would give us what we needed. That's not what we do. You know, we don't exploit it, but if we needed it, there's friends out there. And that makes me feel good that I know that.
Okay. Chapter 4 for next week, have a